feel, I feel like
32?
I'm 51, but I'm pretty sure I'm only turned 32. But I appreciate that. But let's get
32 years old for
rocking
32 seconds.
something like that. Well, I got no way to see you guys without messing up the screen, so we're gonna get rocking and rolling. A little sneak peek of what we got coming up today.
You got to
Of course,
share
we got
your screen,
Todd
buddy.
Bernard here.
Nobody can see the slides.
Yeah. Reshare,
Okay.
please.
You don't want to just look at us.
This is the first time we've done a webinar, everybody, this morning, so just bear with us. Hey, there you go.
Woohoo.
Oh, nope, lost it.
Well, you got something.
Great, there's somebody's text.
Yeah, we can see your text.
There's Nick.
Hey, there you go.
Really?
Now we see Todd.
There's
You're almost there.
there's a window behind the thing too, so maybe there's something on that pop up behind it, Mike.
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can, man.
Behind that.
Okay, at least minimize so we don't the whole world doesn't get to read your text message. Yeah.
Behind this,
Yeah,
there's something
all right.
on the screen. That
But
might
this
be.
isn't. We're not.
Oh,
sharing.
okay. Sorry. All right. Good.
Click on the PowerPoint
Wow.
right there. Hey.
All right, can you guys see the screen now?
Yeah, buddy.
Yes.
All right, so now we're ready to go. We got to practice this next time. All right, we got Todd's look at the numbers. We got Matt Baker give us our mortgage minute. We're going to talk about 3 ways to communicate, different ways to communicate to convert. And of course, we've got Susan Herbert in the house for little contracts and coffee. Susan, I'm on my 5th cup of coffee, so I'm doing what I can to keep up with you. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at webinar@WestUSA. And we got a ton of announcements this morning, so we're going to run through these really, really fast. Just make sure that you go to the My West USA dashboard, click on the calendar button, check out everything that's coming up in the next 2 weeks, or the next 2 days, I should say, and get signed up. But we're going to run right through these, Nick. But tomorrow at 9 a.m., a CE class with Dean Becker, 3 hours of contract law beginning at 9 a.m. That's going to be at the Mesa office, not the Chandler office, but the Mesa office. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about inspections and all the crazy things that go on in inspections. Also, you're going to get 3 hours of disclosure hours. That's going to be in person at the Chandler office. That's also going to be tomorrow. So now everybody's got to pick who their favorite is, Tim or Dean. And so we're going to tally who showed up, and we'll let everybody know. All right, also in person tomorrow at the Goodyear office. The Goodyear office is hosting their normal Tuesday morning office meeting. So we're going to talk about septic tanks and AZ Department of Water Resources. A lot of good stuff going on out there. So make sure you get signed up for it. As always, does not matter what office you hold your license out of, you can attend a specific office meeting. All right, at the Chandler office, coming up at Tuesday tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So just plan on sticking around all afternoon. Maybe Nick will send some lunch down to you, but we're going to have another CE class regarding solar energy and the AAR contract compliance. So obviously solar is a big deal, big conversation, and a lot of confusion out there these days. So get signed up for that. More importantly, let's talk about ice cream. We all like ice cream. So this is going on tomorrow from 1 to 2 in the surprise office. So I want to see what I can do to get out there. I like chocolate malted crunch from Thrifties, please. Also, pop-by event going on tomorrow, 4 o'clock. So pretty much do not plan on doing any real estate tomorrow. Tomorrow's all about education, ice cream, and pop-by. So that's going on tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. in the Arrowhead office. All right, and Wednesday, now we're talking happy hour from 4 to 6 at the Sandbar. So if you are part of the Scottsdale office or the North Phoenix office, we are doing our monthly happy hour this Wednesday from 4 to 6 at the Handlebar. All right, Todd, you got a little CE class coming up Wednesday from 9 to 12. This is going to be virtual, 3 hours of commissioner standard. So I'm pretty sure, Nick, everybody's going to be able to get all of their CE hours done this week. Is that correct?
That was the goal. Yeah, Mikey.
All right, and then this week we got Wednesday, April 13th. The Scottsdale office has changed the day of their regular office meeting, so it's going to be on Wednesday, April 13th. Kyle Fouts is going to stop by, and you're going to learn more about Knock. Knock is a fantastic program which everybody should really become associated with. So that's going on this Wednesday, April 13th. This Thursday, Keith Flynn's going to stop by. We had Keith on the webinar last week talking about digital marketing. Canva is a great program to create a lot of your own flyers, a lot of your own marketing pieces. And so Keith's going to take you through this step-by-step process on how to use Canva. That's coming up this Thursday from 10 to 11. This will be virtual as well. And then we've got the, what do we got? Thursday, we got Awatuki's office meeting. So we got Dale Stauffer from My Found Agent, Tammy from Knock, and Dean Becker is going to stop by. Lunch will be provided. So if you sign up an RSVP, make sure you show up. Donna will track you down.
Yes.
And collect her $2. So anyways, that is coming up this Thursday, April 14th at 10:30. All right, West USA Surprise Office is doing a social hour this Thursday from 4:30 to 6:30 at Macayo's, one of my favorite places. So make sure you show up for that. And then really important, I love this every year, the Goodyear office does an incredible Good Friday celebration and event that's going to involve all kinds of good things, including the Easter Bunny eggs and photos. So not only come down with your kids, but invite some clients down. This is a great way to connect with your clients, get some pictures taken. That's going on this Friday, April 15th from 10 to 12 p.m. So as always, if we went too fast for you and you didn't get a chance to write down the information, you can always go to your dashboard, click on the calendar button, take a look at all the events coming up and get signed up. All right, so that was an entire mouthful. I'm ready to suck some coffee. So Todd, I'm going to turn this over to you. What is going on in the market?
All right. Well, turning it over to me means that you have to still press the down arrow today. So I don't have the keyboard.
I can drink coffee in one hand and arrow the other.
There we go. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Today's obviously April 11th, and we're going over the metro market analysis for the residential real estate totals for the last week and the week prior. Just getting right into it. 27 days close on market this past week. There's a couple of things that we're going to really see this week that are not anomalies, but they're really turning points in the marketplace. 0.87 months supply, 114% absorption rate. Our average list price is at 817. Our average sale price at 570. Our list price to sale price ratio creeped up just a little, 101.87. The active inventory, Mikey, here we go. Nice job. 4.9% increase in that. 6,200. This is the first time we've been over 6,000 in probably 3 months. We did have a spurt where we were almost back to 9,000, but then right after the first of the year, it just started coming down again. But 6,232, that's a good number right now. Pending is sitting at 4,900, and our closed units month to date are at 2,381. Taking a look at new listings, we took good job, everybody. 2,332 new listings this past week. That's a 5.7% increase. That's real close to 2,400. That's our magic number. 68 days on market for the entire MLS inventory, 27 days on market for close. Looking at our price ranges, we're sitting under 500,000 is representing, look at that, we were up to 54%. Now this is down to 50%. So again, that market's shrinking because that must be where you're selling the houses from. So in that same thing, when we're taking new listings, we must be taking new listings in the $500 to $1 million market range, because there's your majority of your increase right there, 35.3 representation of that portion of the market. And then down at $1 million is sitting at 14%, and that's up about another 2%. So you saw that's exactly where, and I think there's that $1.2 million sweet spot of the market, 800 to 1.2. So we're seeing new inventory going into that $500 to $1 million price range, and also into that $1 million to 1.7 price range. And that's where the growths are. So we go to our next slide, which is our statistics itself. And this is where we get a chance to really compare the two numbers side by side. And those are really small numbers from here today. So if maybe we can get Nick to increase that just a little bit, or I may have to move. So we're sitting across the top. Well, if you look in the very center column, you'll see the goldenrod, and that goldenrod section represents 3 years ago in 2019. Thank you, Nick. In 2019, and as a result, we compare everything that we're seeing to that particular, those particular numbers. The column right to the left of that represents 2021, same period during that particular year, and then again the two columns to the left are week over week. Columns to the right in blue, for those of us who are not familiar with this sheet, is our month for last month of March, and then the prior month to that as well. So 2,332 new listings. We had taken 2,200 the week before, but notice in 2021 we took 2,405 listings. So we're very, very close to the same new listing count. Now last week we were ahead, but again this week, we slipped just a little bit behind, but we're tracking the same numbers as 2021, which means a banner year again. Slide your eyes a little bit to the right and you'll see we took 2,600 in 2019. So that obviously is saying 2019 was a little better. From a confidence perspective from sellers, that's really what it is. As we all know, the sellers really aren't really sure where they're going, so they're having a hard time making a decision to pull the trigger to list the house. In the active inventory, 6232 this past week, excellent, up from 59. Slide our eyes to the right. Look at that, 5,400 is all we had. We have 800 more listings in the market right now than we had prior, 18,000 a few years back, so we really just won't pay attention to that number too much. 838 is our coming soon inventory. That's up quite a bit. 5,044 is our single family detached. 563 is our new home construction, and then again, that means taking it away from 6,232, that 6,262, yep, that was right, are non-distressed properties in total. Again, the next section is just distress. We don't spend hardly any time on this. This is really just for identifying, for those of you or those customers of yours that say, oh, I'm just going to wait for the market to shift, the prices to fall, and there's this looming foreclosure inventory. Obviously, for those of you who are new with me, that is not true. For those of you who have been with us for quite some time, I'm sorry that's so repetitive, but we just have to keep saying it so you understand what's going on in the market. Under pending, this is really how we gauge how many people are really in the marketplace today that are serious. Serious buyer, serious seller, and obviously some serious buyers aren't winning the listing. Aren't winning the bid, so they're having to be postponed. So there's probably more buyers in the marketplace, obviously, that are being turned away. But at this particular point, this was down just a little bit. And if you slide your eyes to the right, it's way off of where it was a year ago. So that's probably why inventory is creeping up, is because we've got 1,000 less properties in escrow than we did, a year ago. And so as a result, that's where it's being made up. Taking a look at closed inventory, a little too early in the month, but again, a little red ticker. Slide your eyes way over to the right. We talked about this just last week, but we said we finished the month with 10,141 closed for the month of March, and that was 10,400, the year prior in a banner year. So if we're right about the same number closed per month, so even to the number to the left, we're showing right now about 18% off. But as we get closer to the end of the month, that is a more accurate number. So we'll just continue to show that to you, but we won't, again, spend significant time. And inventory, there's no distress, so it's not closing. There's nothing there that's closing as well. So that's what that's there for. Month supply. So we do have a 0.87% month supply. That is up from 0.9 week over week. And if you take a look way to the right again, you'll see a 0.68 month supply. So we actually have 0.87. We have more months supply right now. So again, it may be just this week. Next week could be down. The week after could be up. This is obviously a point in time, once a week, extraction of what's going on. But to the same point, you can't be telling people that that there is no inventory. There is plenty of inventory right now. The problem is that we are not having enough new inventory hit the market to have inventory levels grow. But believe me, if there was probably 500 more properties available today, would we close those extra 500 properties? Maybe. Again, we can't say for sure. So we are not speculators in real estate. We are historic. What's that called? We deal with history of the statistical numbers, and so historians, that was the number I'm looking for. So that's really our job. We are not to speculate the future. So we're not supposed to be telling people to pay more than comparable value, and we're also not supposed to be scaring them into doing business through sensationalism. Average list price was up to $817. Average sale price at $570, down just a little bit from $573. And our market, we know, is very, very brisk. We had last week was down to 27 days on market, so that's a a real drop from 31. And then finally, which ends our statistical review, but probably again one of the more important numbers to track, is what was the difference between the list price and the purchase price at the time the seller accepted the offer, and not the original list price, but at the time they accepted the offer. So when you see this at 100%, what you're basically seeing is that the seller is actually accepting the same price that they have it listed for at that time. If it's over 100%, that means that people are paying more than what it was listed at the time. And then again, the same thing if it was under, then they're paying significantly less. So this is something really good to track. We're at 101. Historically, we're about 98% on this. So when we're over 98%, it is a tighter market and the seller's not giving up anything. So those are the statistics right now. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call. You can call me anytime, obviously through the main office number, or reach out to me with my cell phone. Every social media thing I have has my cell phone, direct cell phone for you. So please give me a call if I can answer any questions for you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week.
I appreciate it. Todd, as always, good information. All right, with that being said, we're going to bring in Matt Baker from the BOOKSPAN Baker team, see what's going on in the mortgage world.
Let's rock and roll. So, market is continuing to unwind. And I was looking at how do I, sort of put this in a way that everybody can maybe, better understand, or maybe just get a concept of like how much the market has changed from an interest rate standpoint. So back in mid-November, the difference between mid-November and today in basis points, which is something I'll explain in a second, is about 700 basis point change between then and now. And so when you actually think about that, that's considered like 7 points or 1% of the loan amount change. So you're talking about 7-point market change between then and now. And you're like, well, look, I understand inflation. I understand all these kind of factors, but like, why? Well, I was thinking about this weekend, and when you physically push something low and you keep it low for a long time, pressure builds, right? And so this is, I think, potentially an overreaction, but nevertheless, a release of pressure as you take the foot off the proverbial gas. Boom, it shoots right up, and it's gone pretty quickly over the 4-5 months. I guess close to 6. But you're like, gosh, the last 5 months we've really unwind. And as a lender, that makes this a little bit more challenging because we're having to go back almost every other week and pre-approve buyers for the new reality of where rates are. So if you have a buyer that you've been out shopping for 1 month or more, and you haven't talked to the lender about, hey, have you rerun numbers? Do they qualify for this amount? That's going to be a huge thing to do. Hopefully your lenders are proactive.
Well, that's a good point, because in the contract it says that you cannot use the interest rate as a reason for unfulfilled loan contingency. So, so if the interest rate goes up and you didn't lock it during the inspection period, that's your problem as a buyer, and you will still lose your earnest money for failing to close because the interest rate took off. So you have to lock those interest rates during the inspection period if they want to protect themselves.
Absolutely. But you also need to make sure that maybe before we even write the offer, hey, under new rate environments, does this even work?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes agents, we don't necessarily say, oh, well, I need to go back and check with the lender. We're just out there with our pre-qual doing our thing. And this is just a good reminder. So let's talk a little bit about home price appreciation. If you go to the next slide, it's actually something that I think is that I'm getting some feedback for. So I thought I would share some interesting data. But how, 15 years ago, that's when we were experiencing the housing recession, right? And there was a crash associated with prices. And I think that most people think recession, they think, oh my gosh, we're bubbling, we're going to pop. And here's some data that just, I think would help refute that. But go to the next slide. So over the projected 5 years from 2022 on, now this is a national average, and I think Arizona, maybe Phoenix Metro specifically, is about double the national average. 4 times? No,
yeah, it's 4.5.
Okay, so I think we're even better than this. But over the next 5 years, assuming we're in a higher rate market environment, we're expected to still have a price appreciation over the next 5 years based on some of these economic projections. So So that's interesting. Okay, go to the next slide. So this is the last time interest rates increased greater than 1% over a period of months. And you can see that up here, 93, 94. Now, everybody I talk to, I just got into the mortgage business in 1994. So, that dates me a little bit, but a lot of people that were in the industry that are still in the mortgage industry today say that was one of the hardest times in the market because of that increase of 2.38% over a 14%, over 14 months. But look at home prices. They still rose 3%. And you track back to all of these market areas where rates took off quickly, 1% or more gain over that period. And look, every period of time has price appreciation. So the fact that even though rates are higher, the fact that you think that because of rates are higher, the market's going to crash or that the prices are going to come down is just really not there, right? And so this is a really good slide for those folks that think, well, the market has to correct. And if we go into a recession, prices are going to fall. I'm just going to wait. Not so fast. Look at where the 5 years projections are and look at every other increased rate window and there's price appreciation. So really some good numbers. If you go to the last slide. This kind of talks about the potential for household wealth over the next 5 years, assuming that home price expectation increase of 3 to 5% appreciation. You're still going to have some pretty amazing exponential economic growth.
Beautiful.
So why wait why wait for maybe something potentially which based on this numbers is not going to happen? You're just going to lose out on hundreds of thousands, 96,343 to be exact, of average of what you could potentially be losing if you don't buy now and you wait 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in this example. So hopefully this helps. And again, if you want to reach out to me directly, obviously I'm full of this information and I'm happy to share it with you.
Matt.
What's that?
I said, you're full of something, Matt. But
Yeah.
We did have a question come in. I want to just address it really quickly. So back to the rate increases, we had a comment come in asking, couldn't you write a contingency rate not to exceed a certain percent or the buyer may cancel? Are you seeing that at all? And that's something they do in California, I guess.
Well, the problem isn't could you write it? You could write anything. The problem is how does it affect what you write affect the remainder of the contract? And I always recommend that although that may seem to be a high caliber question, I would recommend that you have either your broker advise you or you have an attorney advise you, because the language is exactly contrary to that. And so there would be numbers of places in which a simple comment like that could really cause confusion and maybe contrary information in the contract, which could cause people to have to go to civil liability instead of handling it in just
one of the forms, the denial forms that we issue when we do have a denial, if we don't do a good job on the pre-approval, is debt to income ratio, which is impacted through a rising interest rate. So there are still ways lenders can probably present that statement of denial that based on the facts. I mean,
that's like saying you can use an inspection period to get out of a contract for any reason, and that's not true either, although there are many reasons. The problem is it's not a good practice to teach because it's not always applicable.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
All right, Matt, appreciate it. As always, great information. And as always, reach out to Matt if you want some of this information in a flyer form or in some way to market yourself. So Matt, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
You got it.
Big info.
All right, so moving right along to creative communication tips. Really what we're wanting to do here, guys, is increase our conversion through different ways of communicating. Let's just face it, emails is not the most effective way to communicate with someone. Emails often get lost, leaving voice messages. I don't know if you guys are like me, my unlistened voice messages back up. But there's a couple other ways to communicate to really reach people. And number one, I think one of the most underutilized forms of communication is direct messaging through social media. We are on social media all day long, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, the TikTok, and all of the other things. People just sit there all day long. And every time that there is an alert up there, our eyes gravitate towards it, and we we very rarely leave those types of alerts left unread. And so I'm encouraging. So what I do a lot of times, especially, and then I've been noticing my phone, Nick, has been getting creepier and creepier. I'll notice I'll start texting someone, or I've been on the phone with someone, especially another agent on a cross sale or a potential client. All of a sudden, they're now a suggestion, a friend suggestion on my Facebook page. But especially if we're talking about a potential client, feel free to go out and friend them. But communicating, with people through social media, I think is just it's a more comfortable environment for them. It's a more relaxed environment for them, and I feel like you got a higher probability that they're going to actually read your message and communicate with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, social media conversations are way more casual. It's less high pressure. You're able to just kind of talk to somebody. I would say, though, before you're able to really communicate with someone on social media, you do need to be a friend of that person, or you're going to go into the super special secret message box that no one knows how to get to. So make sure before you send that message, you friend them, get that accepted friend request, and then start reaching out and communicating.
Yeah, the other thing, Mike, on this one is this is awesome. I love this particular number. But the thing I think a lot of us deal with is our phones dinging away. And so, you're in the middle with a client and ding, phone goes off. Or you're, at home and then somebody replies to a thread that replies to a thread that replies to a thread, and it goes ding, 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 and it's almost interrupting. So what you want to do is also go in and create a special ringtone or a special notification tone for your clients that you're communicating with, and then turn off the one that says follow the thread. And that way you'll get the initial ding, and if it's something that's important, you can stay up on it, and if it's not, then obviously it's no longer going to interrupt you.
All right, appreciate it. All right, when Nick calls or texts me a special ringtone, I think Paul Simon had a song out years ago about short people, so it's fantastic, and I always know it's Nick. So so anyways, you got that. So it's number 2.
I actually like that song a lot. Thank you.
Number 2 is, and this is one of my favorite ways, and I do a lot of this, but sending video text. We know that text messages has the highest open rate of any type of marketing and any type of communication. However, we want to do something a little bit more creative than just a regular text, especially when you're wishing people happy birthday, or especially when you're talking about new clients. Something about them seeing your face, it really kind of breaks down that barrier. They feel a little bit more closer to you, and you get a better chance, I think, of getting them to respond. So I do a lot of these, whether whether it's a new client, whether it's somebody from my team, or whatever the case is, when I need to get a little bit more creative with someone, or when somebody a lead starts ghosting me, I'll send them the are you ghosting me text. But I'll shoot a short 30-second video on my phone, and then I just text them whatever it is I want to say. You can do professional marketing text. Ryan and I, we've got a segment where at least once a month we're doing a special video with market updates. We send it out and keep in touch with this specific marketing segment of ours. But you can also send impromptu personal messages, such as nice to meet you or happy birthday. Maybe you're just driving down the road and you don't want to shoot a video while driving down the road. I do it, but we can't encourage you to do it. But you think of somebody, you think of something to say, be a little bit more creative and shoot a quick little video, guys.
I mean, the ability to send a personalized video text it's something that a lot of realtors are doing. And in a world where there's lots and lots of realtors and lots of people marketing for your attention, doing what other people aren't is probably a really good idea. We talk about this a lot. CRM system. There is a CRM system that we talk about a lot called Wise Agent. They allow you to do a quick text to your sphere of influence. So you can set that up through them. You can schedule those to go out. If you're doing an open house and you can get everyone to register through your CRM, you can do a quick 30-second, thanks everyone for attending this open house today. If you have any questions, here's my contact information. And with a couple of clicks, you can send that to everyone who attended that open house. Doing personal check-ins with your people. I mean, again, the stat is very clear, 98% open rate on text message communication. we are seeing a little more of an uptick in spam messages, but it's still the best way to communicate with your people.
And just be on purpose. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. Don't put two topics in one little short, something that makes it difficult for people to understand. Make it clear, concise, short, and to the point.
All righty. And the third one, I'm going to go back to social media on this one, if I can get my screen to move, is, we talked about, just communicating with people through direct messaging, but I also want to talk about, and Keith and I, we started this conversation last week, and I've been doing a lot more of it. So you're going to obviously refer to point number one, but when you post something on social media or you might comment on somebody else's post, if there becomes a dialogue and you think you can take that dialogue into a deeper conversation, go ahead and I would just connect with that specific person, because you don't want to go too deep into it, for public consumption. So I would take every, public social media conversation and dialogue over to direct messaging. We see this a lot on the real estate agent Facebook groups, where somebody wants a referral or recommendation, and we see a lot of these conversations then kind of, going through direct messaging away from public consumption. But we spend so much time talking about social media, and we spend so much time strategizing. When you are posting something on social media and somebody starts to ask you questions and start commenting, and especially if you feel like you can convert this into additional business, don't hesitate to take that conversation through direct messaging, because as we mentioned earlier, people tend to be open books on social media. And for whatever reason, that's just kind of who we are. And you might be able to get a deeper conversation with them, communicating with them through social media than you might if you just picked up the phone. Guys?
Yeah, I love this point. I mean, what I would say first and foremost is, if you're going to be able to get someone to talk to you, your post needs to be intentional. So you need to ask an open-ended question, post something that's going to get interaction, and then when you do receive that interaction, 100%, being able to take that offline or outside of the public eye, you're going to get more conversation and honesty with the individual. But I would say, when you do that, comments sent you a DM, so that people see you're not ignoring the people that are commenting on your post. And then that individual, again, has a heads up that there might be a message in their inbox waiting for them to respond to.
So Mike and Nick, a question that I would think many people are having, are we directing people to the DM, or are we only using that resource based upon the product they're responding from? So in other words, the channel they're responding from. So if they're coming from LinkedIn, you want to DM through LinkedIn. If they're coming from Facebook, you want to DM through Messenger or things of that nature.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Stay on the medium that you're currently
right, because they've already shown you or told you by replying that I'm paying attention using this channel.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, guys, appreciate it. All right, we are the most exciting part, and the reason why so many woke up so early this morning, grabbed a cup of coffee or a pot of coffee to hear one of our favorite. She's in my top 5 of favorite brokers at West USA. So Susan, want to welcome you to the webinar, and can't wait to see what we have to talk about. Coffee and contracts. What are we doing today?
Drinking coffee.
Talking about contracts.
Drinking coffee, talking about contracts. And I like that on the lower picture that I'm Bob. So that's kind of interesting.
There you go. Huh.
I can be Bob for, just for a minute. I don't mind. How are you, sir? Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a great weekend, and looking forward to being back in action. So let's rock and roll.
All right. Well, the first thing I wanted to bring up is that there's change coming up in your ARMLS listing planos. What's going to be brought up probably by about the end of the month, at least that's the target date, is that your public remarks field, that's the field where the long one, where you type stuff and you type, light and bright and all that other great stuff about the property, is going to have some inappropriate language policy added to it, where the remarks in that area can only be used to describe property attributions and the location. Now, that was as a direct result of, it's actually what most MLSs do. It will just keep all verbiage about the property and where it's at. Sure, you could say, located close to this bakery or this walking path and things like that still, because that's location. And you can talk about the house, but you can't talk about any type of marketing or put verbiage in there
Like
that,
72 hours to have fun.
like that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just wondering. Okay.
Similar to
All right,
that.
so yeah, so what are some? Give me some additional examples of what you're commonly seeing us do as agents that would be a violation of this new policy.
So let's say you worked for Century 21, and obviously we know you can't say other brokerages' names in the comments. However, you could say, this is the best home of the 21st century, right? I mean, that's
Puffing.
That's, well, it's indicating Century 21. You know, it's leaning towards
Oh, I see
Century
what you mean.
21.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that I'm not just targeting. We're not talking about a specific brokerage, but you know, there are, when it comes to ARMLS listings, if you as an agent see something and you don't either call the agent to request them to fix it, or you don't report it, there's no ARMLS police. There is no police. You
Right.
are the ARMLS police.
Yep.
So when there's violations in there, such as me saying something wonderful about myself or my company, which is not that uncommon, nobody reports it. It doesn't ever get.
So this could also be, you know, where we're talking about, seller requests buyer to use American Title Service Agency. That will now be considered inappropriate language.
Correct. And you can still put that in the private remarks because the public's never going to see that.
Mm-hmm.
That is strictly realtor to realtor or real estate agent to real estate agent communications. You can still say that. You just can't put anything. You have to be really cautious on it. And it's not going to be like, oh, fines are going to start coming down. They're going to use 6 to maybe even 12-month education period.
Now, was this something that was handed down from NAR's bylaw committee, or is this something that is, I mean, was it recommended but then allowed for each local to make their own decision? I mean, how did that come out?
Part of it came from, we're trying to stay ahead of some fair housing issues. Yes, it's got to do, the DOJ and all that. They like have binoculars staring at everything MLSs do, NAR does, and people out there that we don't even know. So trying to stay ahead of some of that to make sure that there just isn't any, you can't say near a church. You can't say near, it's a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of that, just to keep you guys safe.
Now, I know this is probably not on your agenda, but it's a pet peeve. And since you're on a committee, is there any talk or any conversation for making it a requirement to upload an HOA addendum before a listing could go live if it's in an HOA?
There has been a lot of conversation about that in the last maybe 4 months. And let me tell you the challenges of that. So there are non-realtor members of ARMLS. Not everyone that is a member of ARMLS or subscriber, of ARMLS is a realtor. The HOA documents are AAR documents that only realtors may use or have access to. We are the only MLS in the state of Arizona that has non-realtor members. So we get, and it's a valid comment, well, how come this MLS here, Tucson or White Mountain, whatever the other MLSs are, how come they do it? We are the only MLS that has non-realtor members. So we can't say you have to use the HOA addendum, nor can we risk non-realtor members getting a hold of the HOA. It's a copyright issue. Right. So you could say, well, the information has to be there. So here's what's happened to solve the problem, we think. If an agent is inputting a listing and they check yes on HOA, and we're working on this. This isn't done yet. It's a work in progress in the back, the people who do the data stuff in the back. If you mark yes, it's going to require a whole bunch of other things to follow it.
Nice.
Questions about fees and transfers and da-da-da. So while the document itself might not necessarily be there, the information should be there. So the listing agent's going to know, I got to have that information. So the buyer at least has it if they don't have the doc, because those numbers that are required by the HOA could actually price someone out of that home, right? Because it can
totally.
be extremely
Correct.
high. It can be thousands of dollars.
Yep.
So, Mike, it's a very passionate issue, and I'm one of them. That I really want to see that, but I understand why. It's a step in the right direction.
So, Mike, that's a really good point, and I would recommend that maybe you could even challenge some of the rest of the realtors in our business, certainly at West USA, to share their comments when they see things that, like you're bringing up now. They should bring it to the attention of a committee member or our broker staff, and then let our broker staff communicate and help, see if there's any momentum to it, because that's a real big issue.
It is. And both Dwayne and I are on the board of directors, and I happen to be the chair of the rules committee. So that's why I've had so much.
Look at you, name dropping yourself. I love it.
I'm not.
Okay,
But I do want to know that I'm there if somebody has questions.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So there's some good stuff going on. So I'm going to steal this little phrase, and I don't know who it came from. I want to say Rick Mack, but maybe it wasn't. When we talk about the contract and we have this giant blank page of page 8. The funny thing is the only reason there's so many lines is to make it so that the breakup of the lines didn't wind up on 2 different pages, right? As brokers, we really wish there was 2 lines, but there's this giant page of lines. It's not an invitation to express your creative writing abilities. and that was the little thing that came from, I don't know if it was Marge or Rick or whatever. That's like, we have nightmares about that page. That page scares us so much because that's where things go that
Get realtors in trouble.
Scratch our head. Yes, because every word in that document in the residential purchase contract was written and vetted by attorneys. And as soon as you put things on there, it can be.
To my earlier point.
Yeah.
You put something on the contract and you have no idea the remainder of the boilerplate that may affect or may not affect. You may think it affects and it maybe doesn't. So
right.
Both sides. Yeah.
And so a perfect one is honor before. So that one, I know, look at Todd. He's like, oh my God. Yeah, we cringe. Yeah. So honor before, what does that mean? Buyer comes in, wants to make an offer. Seller goes, I really want to close this date. And the buyer's like, I can't do that. I need, this amount of time. So the buyer's agent kind of says, well, look, we'll put honor before, we'll try to close sooner. So we'll put honor before May 30th as a closing date. And so the seller thinks, okay, great. Let me tell you what you just did. You just made any date prior to May 30th a potential closing date. So here's what could happen. And this is a worst case scenario, so don't get any ideas. Honor before. So buyer gets through the inspection period, and you're maybe 2 or 3 weeks into escrow. All of a sudden, seller says, okay, I'm ready to close. Buyer goes, what?
I told you I wasn't going to be ready for a while.
I told you I wasn't ready for it. But it's like, but I want to close. It's honor. Seller says, I want to close now. Seller sends a cure notice to that buyer. Close. Give you 3 days to close. So, and the buyer's going, huh? What are you talking about? Not knowing that seller has a backup offer that's $10,000 more than the one that you put in. And guess what? Boot that buyer right out.
And the buyer lost their earnest money.
And the buyer lost their earnest
Probably.
money. Now that whole theory there has not been tested in court. So let me just say that caveat. But honor before is like this horrible pack of worms that you just opened, and don't do it.
It was in our older contracts, in our 1994 single page contract, and the first 4-page contract, and the 6-page contract. We had it in there, and then the attorney said, "This is the most dangerous wording. You need to pull it out." So they did, and it's like some of these agents. I don't know who's recreating this, but maybe it's those that have been in the business for 45 years. But I don't think so. Somewhere along the line, it was trained, and now other people are doing it wrong.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
You can always close earlier. Yeah. Anytime the 2 parties agree to it.
Surprised you're not going to talk about honor before. No.
So I think the rule of thumb though for me, Susan, and I don't even understand it, but we've got 5 brokers full time at West USA, and for me, unless I am simply copying and pasting in something in the additional clause addendum or copying and pasting verbiage one of the brokers has sent me and putting that on page 8, I'm just running it by one of you guys. No matter what, no matter how creative and what I'm trying to say on page 8. There's five of you. Just run it by you guys.
Honestly, I wish the first line of page 8 said, call your broker.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, don't write anything here unless the broker approved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will
Yeah, a
help
little checkbox. Buyer.
you, even help you draft the language. So that's kind of a big making the phone ring thing. And the other one is writing this property conveys as is. I know. Remember we had an as is addendum.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get it.
Yeah. But we used to have warranties.
We used to have, there was just a whole kind of different bird. As is not a legally standing term. It has no
Nothing.
merit. It doesn't mean anything.
Let me chime in, Susan, on this one.
Yes, sir.
I love the as is language, and I will tell you why. When I'm representing a buyer, and I know a seller or the listing agent wants my buyer to buy something in as is and write as in language, I happily do so, knowing that it's not binding, knowing that they still have the right to do a home inspection and still have the right to request repairs, which I'm going to do towards the end of the inspection period. So I don't care about writing that language in there if I'm representing the buyer.
I get it. It is as long as your client understands what you're doing, that's totally fine. So I guess this conversation in your situation would be for the listing agent of that, if it's ours, of the house, is like, understand that your sellers, I want this to sell as is. Explain to them it means nothing. If you are going to write it in there, my suggestion is you would say, as is per lines 191 and 192 of the purchase contract, which is the buyer and seller agree the premises are being sold in its present physical condition, blah, blah, blah. So that way it makes sense. There is legal standing. And I get that, Mike. I don't think that's a bad strategy necessarily.
So then on the flip side, if I represent the seller and everybody agrees that we're buying it as is, then I could just require the buyer to send the BINSR over with the purchase contract, accepting the property in its current condition with no repair request. Now it's actually an as is contract, correct?
That would be correct, but it's also a very dangerous contract because whether you're on the buyer side or the seller's, well, for the buyer side, we would shake your head and go, don't do that, because you just literally threw all the buyer's abilities to inspect and learn and just find disclosure. So from a buyer's perspective, that's not good. But from a seller's perspective, it's not good either, because you just kind of forced a buyer to buy your property with no disclosure. That property, that transaction, I should say, is going to wind up ugly down the road. Because if I was a seller and I said, okay, that's what I want my buyer to do, and the buyer did it, then the buyer could say, well, you coerced me, or it's just not a good idea.
Yeah. No, well, I'm just saying, I think that it exacerbates the seller's disclosures, Mike. So for instance, if the seller's filling out the SPDS and is vague in any particular aspect of that contract, then the buyer could use the vagueness as a failure to disclose, because then it would be, did they know or should they have known? And so as a result, I just think it's just not a good idea to use the words as is, period.
Yeah, or send the BINSR over with the contract. Yeah. But here's another little thing you can try to do, because I have seen agents write, buyer will request no repairs. Okay, that's fine, because guess what? They do their inspection. They can still ask for a price reduction or a monetary credit, which personally, I think most buyers want anyway, unless of course they literally can't afford to fix something. But that doesn't, they can still ask for money off. Right? Yep. Negotiate that on an addendum and then send over a perfectly accepted BINSR. What do you think of that one, Mike?
I like that one. I haven't thought about that. I'm always looking for different ways to get around it. I love it.
I'm always here to help you. We do, but we want to give our clients the advantage.
What else you got?
I don't know. That was kind of it.
So I want to go back and and maybe clear up a couple things, and spend a couple minutes talking about the HOA addendum.
Okay.
Because the challenge that we're having now, and I want to just kind of get your perspective on how we should handle specific situations. So I'm representing a buyer, house goes on the market, and there is no HOA addendum.
Mm-hmm.
We can't wait till we can't wait till Tuesday or Wednesday for the seller to provide an HOA addendum for that listing agent to upload it. We've got to write an offer where there is no HOA addendum. So we're forced to make a couple some decisions here. One, do we create the HOA addendum ourselves?
No.
Okay. And then don't think about it or anything, just shoot out an answer.
Yeah, the answer is no. Yeah.
So if we're not to create an HOA addendum, what do we do? And then how do we compete with other agents who are submitting their offers with HOA addendums? Now I run the risk of, even though the seller didn't provide it, I run the risk of my offer being incomplete.
How would a buyer write the HOA addendum?
Yeah, see, first of all, under the old HOA agreement, maybe, but under the one that we're currently using, which has been for quite a while now, the first portion of the page 1 is a seller disclosure. Page 2 is the terms of the HOA and what the buyer and seller have the right for timing. Page 3 is the buyer's acknowledgement of page 1, plus what the buyer's saying they are interested in paying or negotiating of the HOA fees. So in essence, it would be like you saying, Mike, oh, so I gave my buyer a lead-based paint document to fill out because the seller didn't provide one. So the top part of it is the disclosure, the bottom part of it is the acknowledgement and receipt.
Yeah, but I would contend the difference between the situation is, I have the ability, if I have the time, I do have the ability to get the information necessary to complete page 1. I can find out what
you just can't fill out anything that says seller as a buyer.
You could technically fill out page 3, but if you don't have the proper, or you don't have the exact numbers or
there's a special assessment that's coming that nobody brought up,
I think the best way to do it would be just a very short one line. You wouldn't even have to do that. You could do a short one line on here. We could go to page 8, but just keep it real clean and concise and short. This contract is contingent on an executed HOA addendum. Yeah, that's it.
That's good.
It's a short line. It doesn't have to scare off a seller with all kinds of blah blah blah.
Good point.
And that way, even if you don't get it for a week, you're fine.
Short and sweet.
Do you think does that work for you, Mike?
Yeah. So it does work for me.
Okay.
The second scenario here, and this is a real life scenario, so we can sit here and say, well, this is technically how it works and how it doesn't work and so forth. But we are getting a lot of HOA addendums uploaded to the MLS with page 3 already filled out by the seller. And I know that it says specifically that the buyer is to complete page 3, but I'm now up against 20 other offers. Okay, so if I go ahead and and let's say page 3, we're okay with the terms, even though the seller checked the boxes, could I potentially be in trouble as an agent if it comes back to bite me for whatever reason?
As a buyer's agent, you mean?
Yeah.
No, not unless, as long as you took those 3 pages, you got your 10 pages already. You took those 3 and you just kind of explained to them exactly what you just told me. You said, okay, so the seller already did your part, but this is what it means. This is you paying for this, this, and this. And you walked your buyer through that. I don't think there would be, it's not ideal, but.
Yeah, it's like seller to waive SPDS. A buyer to waive SPDS is written in the listing, and agents don't want their buyer to miss out because they don't waive the SPDS, which is the last thing you should be taught to do from an attorney, real estate attorney. Never waive anything to your client. But to that point, Mike, if you filled out the contract and you didn't put in there buyer waives SPDS. What does that really mean? That means to the seller, they've got to provide one. And most agents won't even remember, and I hate to say it, but it's true, they don't remember what they put in the MLS. And so that contract comes across, they don't even double check it. Next thing you know, the buyer's curing for, an SPDS midway through the inspection period. So you could kind of apply that same principle to this conversation from that perspective. So I always recommend in my contract classes, I recommend that if you get that, that's fine. Maybe they did it by mistake, maybe they did it, whatever. I always say download it, eliminate page 3, put your own page 3 in, and resubmit it with a contract.
Yep, and that's another stretch.
So we had a question come in. Can you clarify what to say on page 8 for lack of an HOA?
So you would say, this contract is contingent on an executed HOA addendum.
Per lines.
Just short and sweet. And that protects the buyer from, any all of a sudden finding some very, very exorbitant fees on the HOA. Yep. And honestly, if and I know how transactions go for buyers right now. And it's there's desperation there, but that at least buys them the time to get their offer accepted and negotiated. And you put it on that very top line, maybe the seller won't even see it. Which, and then
Susan, all right, we got about 4 minutes left, so I just want to talk about one more thing with this HOA addendum and get some clarity from you as far as timing goes, and how much responsibility and liability do we have as the buyer or the buyer's agent to verify the information on page 1 of the HOA addendum is accurate. So let me give you okay.
Here's your answer before you finish.
None. It is not your task, responsibility. It is not your burden. The buyer's agent should never be calling the HOA to find out the fees are, the rules are. The escrow or the contract states that the escrow company, well, it's technically the seller, the escrow company will get the HOA documents and all the disclosures and financials and such to the buyer at some point in time, usually during the inspection period, not always. And at that point, it is the buyer's responsibility. It's the seller's responsibility to disclose it, but it's on the buyer. Agents should never be verifying those fees.
Okay, so per the contract,
yes,
how much time does a buyer have to verify all the HOA information and fees? So, and
5 days.
Yeah.
In the situation that I'm referring to, we got into it with another agent. The information provided on page 1 could not have been. It was stuff left out. It was off by thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And she was a owner agent / so-and-so. And her argument was, well, she had no really obligation to be accurate on page 1, that it's our responsibility. And then, as you know, in this market, getting HOAs to provide disclosures in a timely manner is challenging.
Yeah, and I find a lot of HOAs won't even talk to buyers.
So, Mike, there's a section of the contract called changes. There's actually 2 sets of changes, one under finance and then another one under just changes to anything in the contract. And anytime something changes, the buyer receives something they didn't have prior that was sent from the seller, like, for instance, a delayed HOA addendum. If the buyer has 5 days in which, even if the inspection period is over, the buyer has 5 days from receipt to inspect that and decide whether they want to move forward with a contract or whether they want to potentially try and negotiate it or whatever, or if it's a deal breaker. But that's any information that was not material information that was not made available prior. Anything that they get, it falls under changes. So to your point,
that's what I want to make sure.
Yeah.
All
So,
right, well,
but to your point, let me just say this: your point. I know it's time. To your point, even if the page 1 was filled out correctly, and then the escrow service company found out that that because they got copies of the documents from HOA that there was a change, even that would be accepted for the buyer to have 5 days. So go ahead.
Yep. All right. Perfect. All right, Susan, real quickly, how does everybody's got a lot of questions? So how does everybody get a hold of you?
Call a broker.
Yeah. Broker hotline.
Call me.
Yeah. There is a new one. Maybe people don't know it yet.
It still goes to the same.
I know it does.
Yeah.
But,
Call us.
All right. Leave everybody with the quote of the day. The secret to getting ahead is getting started. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Susan, Todd, Thank you very much. And everybody go out and sell a home.
Thanks, Mike.